What's up, everybody? Straw Hats Are Cool here, and we are back again with another video. Before we get into today's video, I just want to say thank you, as always, to everyone who's been supporting me in the channel. I know I've been a little bit slower on content recently, just due to being busier with work and also just a little bit burnt out, I'd say, on the OP07 format. Definitely been my least favorite format thus far, so a little bit tired of it as we are getting towards the end of this format, getting ready for our OP06 format. Hoping to start doing some OP06 content soon, but I'm trying to hold off until the ban and restricted announcement that's supposed to be happening at Worlds. We're not sure yet whether or not those announcements will affect us over in the East immediately. However, last time there were bans that were in the East, it was for Kabaji and the Moby Dick, and those did end up affecting us as well. So just trying to hold out and see what ends up happening there so that I'm not, testing cards that aren't going to be legal for tournament play once we get OP06 here. So hoping to start getting some more content out soon, but like I said, got some stuff going on with work right now and just a little bit burnt out on the OP05 format in general. But as always, I do appreciate everyone who is being patient with me and still waiting and enjoying the content that I do put out there. It does mean a lot. Getting close to 2,300 subscribers is still farther than I'd ever hoped to get. And, to me, it doesn't really matter whether there's 10 people or 100,000 people watching. I'm gonna do things just the same as I would always, but I still always do want to try and up the quality of my content as well. But enough rambling about that. If you're interested in buying any singles off of TCG Player, do consider using my affiliate link, which will be in the video description, as well as joining our Discord. Link to that will be in the video description as well. Probably gonna have some more giveaways going on over there pretty soon as well, so keep your eye out for that. But with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into today's video. As always, we're gonna start things off with our chase cards from the main sets. Shanks here is at $2,400 right now. We did have a listing sell a couple weeks ago, as we mentioned. This might have been a Japanese one. Yep. For $1,200, but since then we've not had any other sales on this card. So with that in mind, it probably will continue to drop just a little bit in price. But these manga cards ultimately I do think are just going to be pretty stable where they're at, if not continue to go up just a little bit over time. It's just a matter of finding what price people are willing to buy at. Same thing with Ace. We're at $1,500 right now. Haven't had any sales in a couple of weeks. But yeah, the manga rares, not a whole lot of activity with these going on. They are tough sells just given how expensive these cards are, so not much of a surprise there. But if you've been watching the channel for a while, you will know that a couple months back the manga cards in general all went pretty crazy. For a while, Ace, Shanks, those two are around $500-600 a piece, and if you look at where they're at now, it's still substantially more from where they were at then. But for the most part, it looks like things have calmed down with the manga cards, and as we get further into today's video, we will see that a lot of cards in general are just starting to trend downward, which I do think overall is good for the health of the game. I do think a lot of the cards were getting a little bit outrageously priced. However, I am still a little concerned because it sounds like allocations for OP06 are going to be a bit dreadful, but hoping that does not impact things as badly as I fear it might. For Soga King, we're at $650 thereabout. Coming down a little bit. We are seeing some sales on this one. A little bit more reasonably priced, but even cards like Soga King several months back were around $200. So being at $600 now is still substantially more than it was then, but a lot more reasonable than, say, Ace or Shanks, who are up above $1,000 or even $2,000. So They are selling, again, not a lot of them at a very rapid rate. There was one here that sold for 500, which isn't a bad deal, I'd say. So you can find a good price on your Soga King, just gotta be patient and keep your eye out for it. Sabo, this one's a lightly played, but for near mint. From a verified seller, we're looking at about $230 or $630. They are selling at this price as well. Just a little bit less than the Soga King, but more reasonable. And I still do think that of the mangas, this is the one that is weirdly seeing the most play. And I mean, it is a very good card. It just still baffles me that there are people who play this in their deck. But I went to nationals and I played against several Sakazuki players who had these in their decks. Obviously good players. They were doing well with the deck, but still could not even fathom playing any number of copies of a manga card in my deck personally. But of course, that is always just up to you and your personal preference. For Eustace Captain Kidd, we're still at about $900. I believe last time we checked, we saw that the OP07 mangas were starting to come down as well. And since then, it doesn't look like much has changed there. Haven't really had any sales. We had one on the 15th, but you know, that was almost 2 weeks ago now. So no real movement on this card right now. So we could see this one come down a little bit more. For Law, we're at 900. We did see one sell for this one. I don't know if this one was maybe graded. Nope, just had pictures for just under $1,000. We've got a verified listing here at 930. So this one's coming down as well. I know there was a point in time where this one was about 1,500, and a couple did sell at that price point, but since then things have started to come down, which is nice to see. I think of the mangas, this one was probably the most inflated. Obviously a popular character, but I do feel that it should have been more in line with Eustace Captain Kidd to begin with. Then your obviously the most sought after manga is the Monkey D. Luffy from OP07. It's the cheapest listings at $3,400 right now. We did have one sell, and I think we pointed this out during our last market watch, for $3,600. We've got a Japanese one who sold at a PSA 10 for $2,200, but no sales since then. And like I've said, with Shanks and Ace being on the top end of these manga cards, it is a tough sell. Not a lot of people have the income to drop $3,400 on a cardboard rectangle, but still a very sought after card. There are people who want it, are looking for it, but just kind of waiting for the right price to buy it. Wouldn't be surprised if over time we see this one settle around $3,000, though I don't see it going much lower than that. For the signature card, last chase card we're going to be talking about, we've got the signature Luffy from OP07. Near mint one we've got listed here at about $2,000. I think this has just been the most stable of all the chase cards. Since release, it's been right around $2,000. Not a lot of fluctuation. And I know there are some people who are a little bit surprised by this and still think that maybe this should have more value than the Luffy, but I don't know. I personally value the manga Luffy more than this one for a number of reasons that I've already talked about. And there's usually a little bit of a dispute about that in the comment section down below. Always happy to hear your thoughts down below, so let me know your thoughts on this card down in the video description. Do you think that this card is valued appropriately, or that it should be more in line with the manga Luffy, if not a little bit higher? But that wraps things up for our chase cards. We're gonna go ahead and jump now into our main sets, starting things off with OP01. Got a nice little advertisement for Dragon Ball Fusion World there. Did open a couple boxes for that one. Played some games. Seems interesting. Not sure it's my cup of tea, but I'll try and keep play sets of the cards just so I can play with friends if I want to do that. But starting things off with our leader cards, we've got Trafalgar Law still leading the pack there at about $400. I know there were some people hoping that maybe Law would see some increased viability again, as it has started to drop off in OP05, as it does have a pretty pulverizing matchup into Sakazuki. Very difficult for Law to win that matchup, and with it being probably the most represented deck in the format, Law has started to see less play, though there were some new cards in EB01 that people were hoping would make Law viable again, but unfortunately, as the EB01 format is already coming to a close over in the West, it does seem like the Law was still not able to produce any results. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the support was enough to bring Law back into favor, but maybe with some new bans and restrictions in place that we should be getting during Worlds, Law could come back into play, and we could see this one go up again in price. There was a point in time where Law was right around $500, and since then we've come back down. Though I will say, I do think that was kind of the peak during the buyout hype that was happening a couple months ago. I want to say end of December, early January, we had some pretty absurd buyouts on just about everything, but fortunately seems that things are calming down. Zoro's at about 320. Zoro also seeing less play, as there are just a lot of decks in the format like NL which are seeing a lot of play, and have that Zoro just has an almost unwinnable matchup into your Monkey D. Luffy. Still very expensive just because it's Luffy, not because it's a relevant meta card. And I guess you could say the same about Law and Zoro at this point, as they aren't seeing a lot of play in the current meta. Zoro more so than Law right now, but not to the extent that they were in sets 2, 3, and 4. Doflamingo, right around $240. And OP07 did just release this Friday over in the East, so there was a lot of Warlord support, and I know there were a lot of players over there who are pretty excited to try out the new support for the mono blue Don Quixote Doflamingo. We'll have to wait and see once they start getting some tournament results out there, if it is able to perform or not. But like I said in my last community post, I'm planning to start covering do weekly like meta reports, maybe every other week. Every week might be a little bit much, but just kind of taking a look at decks that are doing both well in the East and the West. So do keep your eye out for that. We'll see when I actually get started with that. Might do one next week just as kind of a conclusion to both the EB01 format in the East as well as the OP05 format in the West, since we are getting OP06 over here in just a couple weeks now. Crocodile right around 130, Kaido at about 150, and then your King and Odin right about 70. Not a lot of changes there. Depending on how Doflamingo performs, I think this is the one that could see the most volatility and either increase in price or drop in price if it ends up kind of flopping over there. It does seem like some pretty decent support, so I wouldn't be surprised if it starts seeing some more success again though. For your sealed product, we are coming down a little bit again. We peaked kind of end of January at about just under $600. Now we're looking at about $510, just a little bit over that. People are buying at this price. Personally, like I always say, sealed products not really my cup of tea, but if that's what you're into, I mean, we are on a dip, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go back up again. So if you want a sealed box for your collection, might not be the worst time to do it, but do also keep in mind that allegedly we are getting reprints for previous sets, though with how allocations are looking for OP06, 7, and 8 from what we can tell already, it's not looking great. We don't even have OP06 yet, but my pre-order for OP07 already got cut as allocations are being confirmed, and the distributor that I've been buying from does not have enough product to accommodate pre-orders which were placed, and that is not a good sign, I don't think, for kind of the direction of the game and product. Hopefully things get straightened out, but Bandai is pushing out a lot of card games, with Fusion World releasing just this week, as well as we're getting the Union Arena as well, so they are pushing a lot of card games. But hopefully they can start moving some of their production more towards, you know, the East or the West as well, as it seems like the East has had a much better situation in terms of finding sealed product. Starting off with our main set cards, we've got Nami here at $350. I think last time we looked at this, it was just a little over 300, so just slowly climbing, and I would say that's pretty much no surprise. OP01 cards are hard to get at this point, like we just said with the sealed product. Very hard to get, and one of the more sought after sets for sure. Nami, while not seeing the play that it was several months ago, still a very good card, and one that has, I would say, the most opportunity to become relevant again in the future, as it is Nami who searches out your Straw Hat cards, and with Straw Hats being the protagonist of your series, we're going to have a lot of those. So Nami's going up just a little bit, but over time I imagine this one will just continue to go up in price unless we get some form of reprint for it. But until then, you know, that's about it for Nami. Eustace Captain Kidd has seen a pretty big increase in price. I can't remember if we talked about it after the price increased or not. I think it was going up, but now quite a bit more expensive than ever before. Seeing success in Film Uta, both in the East and the West, just proving to kind of be the most powerful top end for the card for the deck. And then initially we were seeing kind of a mix between the Don Quixote do Flamingo 10 cost and this Eustace Captain Kidd. But I think the Kidd, kind of being a 9 Don investment the turn you play it if you want to use its effect, and still leaving you 1 Don open to use your Uta's leader effect, makes it very powerful. And the effect just goes very well with additional card draw provided by the mono green Uta leader, as this card really just kind of functions as a brick wall, and with the extra draw power and cards in hand, makes it much easier to protect this card over the course of the game. So definitely a good fit for the Uta deck, and not surprised at seeing success there. But price is getting a little bit outrageous right now. OP07, as I mentioned earlier, did just release in the East, and we did get the Bonnie leader, and I know some people were thinking maybe this card would be a good slot in that deck as well. However, from what we can tell with the early list at least, the Eustace Captain Kidd is absent from those lists. But we do have another 8 cost green card which is making its way into the deck, and we will get into that just a little bit later into the video. So watch out for that once we get to OP04. For Eustace Captain Kidd alternate art, we are at about $100 now. I think I bought one right before they went up, right around 60 still, so glad I got it when I did. Finished off my playset there. I'm definitely interested in trying the Fortress build for Yamato in OP06, though I don't think it's the most competitive build out there. It does look like a lot of fun to pilot, so definitely looking forward to trying it out. But both your regular art and alternate art are a little bit crazy for the Eustace Captain Kidd right now, so hopefully you already had those in your collections. But with Kidd not seeing play in Bonnie, we could start seeing this one drop down a little bit in price, as it may not be the best long-term investment. Yamato is starting to come down a little bit, and if you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, you know we love to see that on this channel. I think this card is extremely overvalued and overrated. I don't think this card will ever be worth having more than one of in your collection just to have it, unless we get some way to give green cards rush efficiently. Just being a 5 cost 5000 power body with no immediate effect on play makes it a very difficult card to get value out of, as oftentimes you will play this card and it will immediately get removed, often also while your opponent is developing a body on the board, making it so that you're essentially just wasting 5 Dawn and a card from your hand, which is pretty pulverizing in a game where kind of the 3 main premises of the game that you need to keep in mind to see success are managing your life, cards in hand, as well as characters on board. This card just does not help a lot with any of that unless it's able to stick, which in the current format is a pretty big ask. Yamato alternate art coming down as well. We saw this one peak right around $170, and since then it's come back down to just a little over 100 now, which is great to see. I have my one copy of this one and I'm happy with that. Don't think I will be going for any more than that unless it comes down substantially more than it is right now. For Kinemon, EB01 format, as I mentioned, is coming to a close over in the East, and I know there were some people who were speculating that this may be playable in the Red-Green Odin deck, and while the Red-Green Odin deck looks to be okay, it's not great. Kinemon is absent from most of those decks, so the price on this one is starting to dip back down. So if you bought these, your best chance probably to sell was a couple weeks ago when they were still selling for more around $30, but they are coming back down, and if you're like me and pick these up for about $10, you're still feeling pretty good about that investment. You'll want to check out some Red-Green Odin content. I know RJ Yosinto has been enjoying the deck quite a bit and has some videos over on his channel. I'll be sure to link his channel down in the video description. It's definitely been one of the inspirations for me starting my channel in general. Very nice guy, and do love the content that he puts out there. Last card I want to mention is X-Drake. I've brought this one up a couple times in the last couple weeks because it will be seeing more play in OP06, specifically in decks like Rona, which are able to get a lot of value out of it, being the green-black combination, as well as a leader effect that allows you to rest a 4-cost. Just works very, very nicely with the X-Drake. But I'm also bringing this up because in those early Bonnie lists that I had mentioned, we are starting to see this card played more in those decks as well, just being a nice 5-cost 6,000 power body with counter, as well as being able to remove a resting 4-cost, which I do think is pretty powerful, given that right now I would say the majority of good cards in the game right now are at that 4-cost or less. Cards like your Rob Lucci, Kuzan, we get the Okiku in set 6 as well. Just a lot of very powerful cards between the 4-cost or less range. A lot of those yellow trigger cards as well being 4-cost or less. So just a very solid card to have as an option in the current meta. We are also seeing Red Purple Law start to come back a little bit in these upcoming sets, and with their whole theme being around playing 4-cost or less, this also is very, very good in that matchup. So I think this one may end up going up just a little bit more in price, so definitely one I would keep your eye on. Already being $3 for a rare is getting a little bit on the pricey end, so if you don't have these in your collection and plan on playing green, I would make sure you have a playset of X-Drake now. But that's it for OP01. Let's jump now into OP02. Did spend a little bit more time on OP01 than normal, so try and get through OP02 a little bit faster. For your OP02 leaders, really, they're pretty stable. Newgate right around 140, Smoker 80, everything else, you know, around that $80, between that $80 and $50 range, which is nice to see, as there were a couple of these guys who were up over $100 not so long ago. So definitely glad to see these ones coming back down, but no serious fluctuations here for our OP02 leaders. Been pretty stable. Makes sense, none of these leaders are seeing any substantial player success right now, so kind of makes sense that they're on the more stable end. Newgate, of course, always just kind of managing to sneak some wins here and there. So for sealed product, we are down quite a bit here as well. We peaked at almost 400 and we're at about 320 now, so still, you know, good. Still up from where we were back end of December when we were about 250. So if you bought back then, you're still up, but definitely not up as much as you were towards the end of January. But after we got that reprint announcement, things started to drop down. though it does look like maybe we're starting to climb back up here a little bit again. So we'll definitely want to keep your eye on that. Though, as I will always say every time I mention sealed product, I am not an expert on the sealed product. It's not something I follow super closely or collect. I am much more of a singles buyer and collector. So I feel like, you know, while I have opinions about the sealed product, you may be able to find someone who's a bit more knowledgeable about the sealed product elsewhere. For our main set cards, starting things off, I know I mentioned these before, but I'm mentioning Edward Newgate, Ace, and Marco. And as we did just have OP07 released over in the East, it's not going to be too long from now when we start getting OP08 spoilers, as it's usually pretty shortly after the next set releases over in the East that we start getting spoilers for the next set. And we should be getting a red-blue Marco leader in OP08. And being that Marco is a Whitebeard Pirates type character, or generally speaking has been a Whitebeard Pirates type character, we could expect the Marco leader to also be of the Whitebeard Pirates typing. And whenever we get new Whitebeard Pirate stuff, it's always worth mentioning some of these cards, as while they're not seeing the play that they were, you know, back in the earlier sets 2, 3, and 4, still very powerful cards. And depending on what the leader effect does and how the meta develops, these are still cards that are great ones to have in your collection, and going to be great cards to have if red starts to make a comeback, specifically if that support is geared towards the Whitebeard Pirates. So Newgate right now is coming down a little bit, right about $15. Same thing for the leader. Leader's the lowest I've seen it in quite some time, right about $36. I don't think prices have been this low on Newgate since it was restricted to 1. So if you don't have any copies of Edward Newgate, I personally think this is a very good price to buy it right now. Newgate obviously being just one of the more popular characters in the series, as well as still being a very powerful card. We have seen a little bit of red purple Luffy popping up a little bit over in the East as well. So if we continue to see red purple Luffy seeing some success, we can expect to see Whitebeard seeing some success as well, as this is one of the best cards to play in that red purple Luffy shell. For Ace, also coming down a bit. Ace was right around $100 for quite some time, but coming back down now to about $65. And what I'll say about Ace is that if the Marco leader we get is a red leader and has the Whitebeard Pirates typing, this card is probably going to be relevant again, because just being a very a solidly statted character that has a really good on play effect and rush means that you're just getting immediate value out of this card, and you're probably clearing some characters on your opponent's board, as giving -3000 to 2 characters even allows things like your searchers to easily swing into your opponent's board and either get cards out of their hand or reduce their characters on board, both of which are great outcomes for you. And then Marco, right about $30 right now. This one's been pretty stable. I think we saw kind of mid-December, maybe once OP05 released and things got unrestricted, that the price shot up a little bit, but since then it's slowly been going back down and settled right around $30. This one, if you're running a heavy Whitebeard Pirates deck, this is obviously a good inclusion as just a sticky blocker. Though with blue being relevant in the current format, this one may be a little less viable just due to the fact that bottom decking effects are not the same as KO effects. So this card can just be removed by those, and there's nothing you can really do about that. Same thing with the rare. It's only $1 right now, but if the Whitebeard support looks good and we start to see blue fall off a little bit, we could see this one go up a little bit as well. We're seeing, as we just mentioned, cards like X-Drake being rares at about $3 now. I know last week we looked at, I think, Punk Gibson also being about $4. So we do see rares climb up in price. And if the Marco deck becomes relevant and wants to run this Marco, could see it go up in price. Nami starting to come back down a little bit. I think when we mentioned this last, it was about $35. Definitely a card you need if you're wanting to play that mono green film Uta leader. I know I get kind of flamed in the comments a little bit, but not reprinting this in the starter deck was, in my opinion, a huge blunder from Bandai. Just making this card more accessible, like there's nothing wrong with that, you know. OP02 is already out of print, and maybe we're getting reprints for it, but reprinting this card is not going to hurt Bandai in any way, unless Bandai, you know, employees are investing in the game themselves. Reprinting a card like this is not going to do anything for them, especially if they did like they did with the rares for the starter deck and just printing them non-holo, making it a little bit less desirable to have in your collection, but still allowing new players to get into the game and have some powerful cards to include in their deck without, you know, needing to shell out nearly $30 a copy for a card like Nami. But it is what it is. Nami EBO1, or the Film Uta deck, did very well in the East for the EBO1 format, and it has been doing okay here right now in the West, though I think the support from EBO1 really helped with some of the consistency, just giving you another searchable 2K, as well as a cheap blocker that was also searchable. So very solid card, very solid, goes in a very solid deck. So expect this one will probably hold value. Maybe we'll see it settle around the low 20s if we're lucky, but don't expect to see it drop down under $20 anytime soon, given the success that the Uta leader has seen. For Borsalino, we are seeing this one drop off a little bit in price again. As I mentioned during the last market watch, Borsalino, while a very powerful card, is starting to see a little bit less play. Decks in the East have been dropping this card, if not, or dropping the number of cards of this, I can't speak English. They are reducing the number of copies of this card being played in their deck, if not cutting it entirely. And the only reason I think that could be the case is just that, you know, it is a very powerful card with a good stat line and blocker, but with blue being one of the more relevant colors in the format, it is a card that can often just get removed, kind of like how we mentioned with the 4-cost Marco. And, you know, just spending 4 Dawn to immediately have it removed, and your opponent sometimes even developing a body, can feel pretty bad on your end. So a lot of players have been cutting this card from their deck and just playing more cards that get immediate value with their on plays. So glad to see this one coming down a little bit in price, but still very absurdly expensive for an SR, and hope that it will either get a reprint or continue to come back down in price. But we'll see how things develop in OP07. The results I've been looking at are only up to EBO1, and we are starting just now to get some results for OP07. Excited to see if the new Lucci leader becomes relevant, as I do want to play that one quite a bit. Lastly, Kuzan, and this one I've also been mentioning quite a bit. You know, these Admiral cards just being on the more expensive end for your SRs. Kuzan, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, is starting to see more play in EBO1. It, like similar to Borsalino, it's a 4-cost, 5,000 power, not a blocker, but with Kuzan you do get some immediate on-play value. And if this card manages to stick on the board for a turn, having that 4-cost cost reduction is a very powerful effect, especially in your Sakazuki or Gekkomorio decks, as you do run lots of removal cards. Just having a nice way to reduce 4 cost by attacking is a very powerful effect. That's it for OP02. Let's jump now into OP03, starting things off with our leader cards. Katakuri, of course, still leading the pack, with Nami not far behind. Katakuri produced some very strong results in what there was for the EBO1 format. Definitely on the shorter format, as it was just about a month before OP07 released, but still very strong leader, and allegedly we are potentially getting more Big Mom Pirates type support in OP08, though from the leaks that there were, it's going to be a yellow purple Big Mom Pirates type leader. So I would not be surprised if that support is in purple, so that it's not just going to continue to power up these mono yellow decks. Would be nice to see, kind of like with some of the other leaders that have gotten continual support, doing kind of a multicolored thing, kind of like with Kaido, where we got some blue animal kingdoms as opposed to just getting more purple ones. But nonetheless, still a very powerful leader. Don't see this one coming down in price anytime soon. Nami also still producing some results, but definitely a more complex deck to play in the game, and one where you really need to know your matchup, so not as heavily represented in the meta, but a good Nami player is still going to be seeing success. Other than that, not a lot of changes here for our leaders, so let's jump into sealed product. About $220 now. This one's been pretty stable, dropping down just a little bit, but more or less the same as where it was kind of before they announced the reprints, just kind of a difference of about $20 to $30. For our main set cards, bringing up Marco again, as like we mentioned with our OP02 cards, we are supposed to be getting a Marco leader in OP08 with the red-blue color combination. So depending on what the character does, we could see these Marco cards start to come back into play. But you know, $7 right now, honestly, I feel like it's still a little bit expensive given how little play this card's seeing right now. So if we end up seeing, you know, some good Whitebeard Pirate support for the Marco leader, this is one we could see go up even more. And you know, like I said, it's not even seeing play and still $7. So you know, if you've not got these in your collection, it could be a good time to do it. But personally, I would probably keep your eye on this one, hope it drops down a little bit more before picking them up, and then if the, you know, support we get in OP08 is any good, you know, make your decision from there. Your Wanted Kaido is the cheapest it's been in quite some time, with our OP05 format coming to a close. Purple more or less falls off completely. Unfortunately, mono purple Luffy is not able to keep up very well with the decks in the OP06 format, and as a result, the purple decks fall out of favor yet again, which is a bit unfortunate, as purple has struggled pretty hard from the beginning. I know Kaido in set 1 did see some success, but I don't even believe it won any major events. And then since then, purple's more or less been non-existent in terms of competitive play. So it was very refreshing to see mono purple Luffy seeing some success in OP05, actually winning quite a few of the more recent treasure cups, if I do recall. But now that our format's coming to a close for OP05, these purple cards are starting to drop down in price, as they are no longer relevant for competitive play, which is a bit unfortunate. But if you're a collector who has not yet picked up your copy of Wanted Kaido, I would say now is a good time to do so, as even the wanted cards like Doflamingo are within the same price range as the Kaido, right about $50. So, you know, still a good card. Obviously one that I think collectors are going to want to have in your collection. So if you've not got this one, I think, you know, now is probably a good time to pick it up if you've not done so already. I'm bringing up our CP cards. As I said, OP07 just released over in the East, and we did quite a bit of CP support as well as a new leader. So with that support, we could see some cards like Spandam and the CP package in general starting to see some more play. You know, we did see, I think, some hype as the new CP cards were getting announced, and now it's starting to calm back down. But if the leader or you know, CP in general starts seeing success, which personally I hope that it does, I would imagine that this card will go back up in price, as it is your searcher for the deck. And you know, any kind of shell that has a searcher, if that Shell is good. The searchers are always going to be played, and as of right now, CP's not been seeing play, but if it does, I have to imagine this card will go back up in price, though we do have the regional variants of this card as well, so that is something you will have to factor into the prices. Players do have options for which art they would like to use in their deck. Kaku is about $15 as well. Personally, I think still one of the better removal cards in the game, just not being able to see a lot of play due to the fact that you do need to be running a CP focused deck in order to get value out of Kaku. But being a nicely statted character with counter and being able to remove a 3 cost without trashing any cards from hand, which is what we initially saw for kind of the cost for playing these powerful removal cards. Just having a bottom deck a couple is really nice, but I do think you've got better options with the 4 cost Rob Lucci from OP07, though I would say that there is a potential that that is one of the cards that gets hit during the ban announcement at Worlds. Definitely one of the more impressive cards in the game, being able to easily remove 2 characters without dropping down in hand side. Just putting a couple cards from your trash to the bottom of your deck is a pretty inexpensive cost for how good that effect is. Khalifa is your 2k counter for CP. It's also a waifu, so makes sense that this one is the most expensive, and if there's any card that is going to definitely be played in the CP deck, it's going to be your Searcher and your 2k. So I think Spandam and Khalifa I would value a little bit above Kaku, but if the CP decks do well, I think Kaku is a good in slot for those decks as well. Same thing with the SR. SR is very cheap right now. If you've not got them and maybe want to try playing CP and OP07, just go ahead and pick these up now. I mean, it's gonna, after shipping, you're probably looking at like $3-4 to pick up your playset of Kaku if you've not got them already. And if they end up seeing play, I would not be surprised if this one goes up in price quite a bit. And then for your yellow stuff, I've just kind of been grouping this stuff together. We are seeing our Katakuris come down a little bit in price as they are not seeing as much play, but with the support we got in OP07, looks like NL is still going to be a pretty threatening deck in the format, and this is of course still going to be played in that deck, especially I think OP06 and on, as we get a new 2-cost card to play in the deck in the SR Hiyori. It's a 2k counter that is able to swap a card from your life in hand, and then you can just play Katakuri to put the 2k back in your life, which is a really powerful combination you could do there. So I think Katakuri is still perfect fit for the NL deck, but starting to fall out of favor in other yellow decks, as Katakuri decks are generally trying to play more aggressively, and this card kind of, it does not fit the aggressive play style. Plays much more into the kind of slower, more control-y style that NL is geared towards. You're putting searchers, it's your Big Mom Pirates type searcher, obviously still sees a lot of play in your Katakuri decks, and I would imagine if we get a good yellow-purple Big Mom Pirates type leader, as we are supposed to in OP08, it will see play in that deck as well, as the search is not color restricted. So if the new support is in purple, Pudding will still be able to search out those new Big Mom Pirates type cards. Your Cracker and Parasparrow alternate arts are right about $33. I think Cracker is starting to see maybe a little bit more play in some yellow decks again. And Parasparrow, of course, still just a great card to play in any Big Mom Pirates type focused deck. Your alternate art leader for Big Mom is starting to come down, and I'm not surprised by this because in OP06 we do get an SP art for it, and understandably so. I would say this is one of the least desirable alternate arts for a playable card. Definitely one that not many players are a very big fan of. Just kind of a weird, creepy artwork on this one. And the SP one does look incredible. So I'm sure your yellow players are just excitedly awaiting to pick up those SP arts in favor of, over these OP03 alternate arts. Your Cracker SR is still rather expensive, which is a little bit surprising to me. I would think, given how similarly in price the alternates are for Cracker and Parasparrow, the price between your SRs would be a little bit more similar, but that is not the case. So a little bit surprised by that. SR Big Mom right about $5. Great card if you're running a Big Mom Pirates type leader. Definitely one you're going to want to have in your collection. So depending on what that new leader does in OP08, I think this is the one that's going to be most likely to fluctuate in price, just because purple being able to ramp into a card like this could be a little bit absurd. So if you don't have big bombs, I would say now is probably a good time to do it, just in case. That's it for OP03. Let's jump into OP04. OP04 leaders are some of the least exciting ones to talk about. Not a lot of changes. They're all somewhere between $20 and $50. Sealed product, kind of like OP03, pretty stable. Dropped $20, $30, but other than that, not a lot of changes with this one. Still think it's there. As we've gotten further into the formats, more of these cards are becoming relevant, but this set in general, I still think is like the least exciting, is how I'm gonna put it. So not surprised. It's also one of the more recent ones, but I don't think this one is ever going to get to kind of the price ranges sets 1 and 2 is what I'm trying to say. For your main set cards, I've got Sugar pulled up here, and Sugar's not been seeing much play right now because the Don Quixote package in general just has not been able to keep up with other decks in the current format, and that is not true going into OP06. We see the Don Quixote package, your Searcher, and just some of the Don Quixote cards starting to pop up quite a bit more. And one deck in particular that I've seen Sugar popping up in quite a lot is Yamato, and I think it's just because it's a 2 cost that can rest a 4 cost, which is pretty good. With, as I've mentioned, there are a lot of very powerful 4 cost in the format, which is why I think cards like X-Drake have been seeing increased amounts of play over in the East. So also just being a good out to resting some of those powerful 4 cost cards is pretty good. I know I was looking at some of the EBO1 Yamato list, and all of the lists I looked at were playing 4 copies of Sugar. So might want to pick this card up now if you have any intentions to play Yamato, as it does look like it's been seeing a pretty good amount of success in those decks. Not as much the other decks that have been running those Don Quixote packages. We've seen it in decks like Perona, as we just mentioned, the Yamato, but definitely this is one that has been a more unique inclusion for some of the Yamato decks. Same thing with the alternate art, one of the cheaper alternate arts in the game, still only $15. It could be a good investment if people just kind of haven't caught on yet that this is doing well in some of those Yamato decks. Now this is kind of the big one. I'm actually going to refresh this here real quick. We've got one listing here at about $6, no sales, but this card is about $17 now. This is the 8 cost card I was talking about earlier. This Rosinante has been seeing play in the early list for Bonnie and OP07 with a much more powerful roster of 5 cost character cards in green. This card is now starting to actually see some play, which is not something I was expecting to see. But just to give you a couple of examples of those cards, in EBO1 we get the Cavendish, which is Supernova type. in OP07, we get the new 5-cost Bonnie, which is Supernova type. So as you kind of see where we're going with this, we've now got a pretty large selection of good 5-cost cards for green, which is not something we were seeing as much before. We've also got the X-Drake that I've been bringing up. You've got the 5-cost Law from the starter deck. You've also got the 5-cost blocker Law from OP01, though that one has not been showing up in the lists, at least not yet. The big ones have been your Cavendish, your X-Drake, the Bonnie, and then I've been seeing some lists that are trying out a couple copies of that starter deck Law as well, which is pretty good. All very, very powerful cards that can be played off of the on-play effect for Rosinante, which is great to see. Just 8-cost 8,000 power character, which is also able to spawn out a 5-cost, is very powerful. And then you've just got the protection as well, which is great. Doesn't protect from your bottom decking effects, but as a whole just plays very well with what the deck is trying to do. So not surprised that this one is actually going up in price. Not something I thought I'd ever say, but you know, kind of looking at the shells that people have come up with for Bonnie, that it seems like a perfect fit for the deck, especially with cards like Cavendish. You know, being able to play Cavendish off of this effectively makes it a 6-cost 8,000 power character that spawned out another 6,000 power character as well, which is just pretty absurd if you ask me. So definitely excited to see what OP07 has to offer and how the meta develops there moving forward. Same thing with your alternate art. It's about $40 last night. I made a post on Twitter last night because it did get bought out, and at one point in time the cheapest listing was $85. Of course that was way over inflated, but we are starting to see some sell at $30-40 now, which is about twice as what they were selling before now. So hey, if you've been sitting on some copies of alternate art, Corazon, or even just the regular arts, good time to sell them. I think I've got about 5 copies of the regular I'm going to be selling here pretty soon now. Your 10-cost Doflamingo, still very good green card. Like I said, not seeing as much play in the Film Uta deck, but it is seeing play a little bit in some of the other green decks like Verona and the Bonnie deck we just mentioned. This is also the top end card of choice alongside your Corazon, and it does work out well, which means you're able to play your Don Quixote Pirates type searcher as well, just searching things out like your 2Ks, and then your top end boss monsters like Doflamingo and Corazon. Same thing with the alternate art. This is actually a damaged copy here at $40. So if we're looking for a near mint with verified listing, we're actually looking at about $60 with shipping. So quite a bit more than I had actually initially thought. I did not realize this was for a damaged copy. So we've got a couple cheaper listings from sellers with not as many sales. And you got some from Trolling Toad here, who pretty reputable, but I'm not a big fan of Trolling Toad. But I mean, I'm sure these are safe ones to pick up, just not the biggest fans of those guys and how they run their business. But yeah, Doflamingo definitely going up in price as green is starting to see more and more success. SP Boa is about $150, still the most expensive SP from the set. Seen its price fluctuate a little bit, and it is on the lower side from where this card's been in the last couple months, but still rather expensive. We are, like I said, we did get some Doflamingo support, and with this being a 4-cost warlord and the fact that we also got a Boa leader, might be some hype around that. I don't personally think the Boa leader is going to end up being all that good, but I would like to be wrong about that. And if Doflamingo ends up being good, I don't think this is going to be one of the core cards for that deck. As while it is good, like I've talked about with some of the other 4-cost, it doesn't do anything immediately on play. And in a format with such strong removal effects. I think the cards you play need to be doing something as soon as they hit the field, because if they get removed, it's like you just wasted your turn. I mean, yes, you are often getting cards out of your opponent's hand, but a lot of these very powerful removal cards are also attached to bodies, so your opponent's developing a board and removing a character on your board, whereas you're not able to do that. And in a deck like mono blue, you don't have that same amount of removal where your bodies you're playing are just removing things. So we need to find our value in other ways, and I just don't think Boa Hancock is the way to do that right now. Sabo, still one of the best cards in black, gonna be seeing a lot of play, but depending on what gets hit, I could actually see this card going down. I don't think Sabo is going to be one of the cards to get hit, but if, for example, Gecko Moria gets hit, I think this card is going to go down in price, because this is one of the key cards for Black Yellow Luffy, and the Black Yellow Luffy deck completely falls apart if Gecko Moria gets hit. The whole game plan with that deck is centered around playing Gecko Moria to get back 2 of the 2-cost kids from the starter deck, 13, and specifically you're trying to get back that 2-cost Sabo so that you can play 2 of these OP04 Sabos from your life for free, whilst buffing your leader up to a 9k for the turn. So depending on what ends up getting hit at this announcement for Worlds, we could see this card get hit pretty hard in terms of price. Still a good card in other black decks. Great one for Gecko Moria. Just a nicely statted character with blocker. It also lets you filter, which is something that the Gecko Moria deck really likes to do. Just get more and more cards in their trash. And then it also prevents all your characters from being KO'd for a turn, which is great, as I've mentioned, especially in a format where there is so much strong removal. Of course, it doesn't get around the blue removal effects, but, you know, still very powerful card nonetheless. Same thing with the alternate art. Depending on what gets hit at the Worlds announcement, we could see this one get hit pretty hard as well. That's it for OP04 though. On to OP05. Seeing our leader cards in general just start to come down, which is pretty nice. All of your OP05 leaders are now under $100. Even leaders like Sakazuki and Enel, which are continuing to see success over in the East in the future formats. Luffy's still up there. While it doesn't see play in the upcoming formats, it is still Luffy and a card that a lot of people are going to want in their collection. But, you know, not a lot of changes for our leaders. Your top 3 are starting to come down though, which is nice to see. For your sealed product, we're at about $270 right now, which is still a lot. We did see it start to come back down a little bit, but it is starting to come back up again. I hope that if and when we get these reprints that Bandai has promised at Nationals, that they go pretty hard into reprinting OP05. And I'm sure there are some people who are going to disagree with me on that, but I don't know. I think it is a very sought after set, and if there's a set that needs, you know, more help, it's sets 1 and 5 I think are the big 2, and then set 2 is also up there as well. But a first pick would obviously be set 1, and then right after that it would be set 5. I think those are the 2 that need some reprints more than the others. Though the one thing you do have to keep in mind with OP05 is that as we get into looking at the prices for singles, they aren't bad right now. So maybe that is something I need to be thinking about a little bit more seriously when I'm making these claims. So, you know, take what I say with a grain of salt, of course. I'm no expert, but I think when the current set is valued at almost $300, there's a problem. For our SP cards, not a lot of changes from when we looked at it 2 weeks ago. Nami, of course, still being up at the top, and then Enel Yamato being just over 100, Uta being a little under, and then your Kaido and Rob Lucci being right about $50. So nothing seriously noteworthy to speak of here. Of course, Nami's still the most expensive. As I've said before, I feel like Nami is kind of the Charizard of the One Piece trading card game. just that we're getting tons of different special alternate arts for Nami, like just about every set, and they always end up pretty expensive. On to main set cards. Your Rebecca from OP05 is on the lower end for where Rebecca has been, and I do think that a lot of this is just out of fear of this card getting either banned or restricted, which would not surprise me in the slightest. Definitely one of the most powerful cards in black right now. Being a blocker, as well as having an on play to not only return a card from your trash, but also play a 3 cost or lower for free, is just pretty insane value, especially when you're able to recur it off of effects like the 8 cost Gecko Moria. So if there is a card that's going to get hit, I'd say there's a pretty good chance that it's Rebecca. So I think out of fear of that, you can see it's just after Nationals, it slowly started to come back down in price. And now we're looking about $40. So I would be, if not for the ban and restricted announcement, I would say this is a very good buy right now. But with that in mind, I would be very cautious of picking this card up right now. Rob Lucci, also about $40. And I think we're seeing kind of the same thing going on here. Same deal. Right after Nationals, we started to see this card drop in price pretty significantly. And it's not because the card's not seeing play. The card is seeing tremendous amounts of play, probably more than it's seeing in our current format over in the East, because decks like Sakazuki are playing it, but you've also got decks like Gecko Moria, which are also playing this card now. So it's not out of a lack of playability that these cards are dropping. I think it's out of fear of these cards getting either banned or restricted. So again, I would be cautious of picking this one up until after the announcement at Worlds. If these cards end up being safe and aren't hit, you know, I'd say these are good prices to pick them up. But if they do, you're going to be glad you waited. Gadatsu, about $27 with shipping here. And if you plan on playing yellow and you want your alts, I still think this one's a pretty good pickup because it is seeing play as a 4 of in just about every yellow deck that is seeing success right now, with the exception of Yamato. But your Katakuris, your NLs, your mono yellow leaders are all playing 4 copies of this deck and seeing very high levels of success by doing so. So Gadatsu is definitely one you're going to want to have in your collection if you plan on playing mono yellow. And I still think this is a pretty good price to pick it up at. We did see it kind of jump up a little bit here to about $35 at one point, but it is starting to come back down now. So if you've not got these in your collection and would like to, I think now is probably a good time to do so, as once we get into the OP06 format, I think we are going to start to see yellow seeing some more play and success, especially going into that EB01 format. I think yellow gets a lot of good tools from that set. Borsellino, this is a lightly played copy at $16, but we've also got some near mints just a little bit more than that. And this card is still very good, but it is one kind of like we mentioned with the Charlotte Linlin 10 cost. We are getting an SP card for art for this card in OP06. So there are going to be players who are opting to use the SP art over the alternate art from OP05. So a little bit of competition in terms of, you know, max rarity stuff for your decks now. But Borsellino is still a very good card in decks like Sakazuki. And I think this could also be a good fit in Doflamingo if Mono Blue Doflamingo ends up being good, as it does hit 4 cost, which, as I keep saying, is one of the most relevant costs to hit right now. And most notably for Doflamingo, this is a 7 cost, which means that on 10 Dawn, you are able to play this and still have 3 Dawns, so that you're able to attach 2 to your leader and 1 to rest for the leader effect, allowing you to cheat out a character from the top of your deck. So I think this card actually, while not a Warlord, does synergize very well with Doflamingo, and depending on how the meta has developed for OP07, could be a very good inclusion for that deck if it becomes relevant. I should have moved this over with Rebecca. Kind of the same dealio here as I said with the alternate art. You know, this is the cheapest this SR has been, but I'd be wary of it because if this card gets hit, you're probably going to feel pretty bad about picking this one up right now. So I would just probably wait a week until the Worlds announcement happens and then reevaluate from there. Maybe you end up paying a little bit more, but I think it's worth waiting, because if it gets hit, I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes like a $1 card. All right, so just be patient. Let's wait for the Worlds announcement. Last card we got for OP07, and I know this video is getting a little bit longer, but you guys always tell me down in the comments you don't mind the length being a little bit longer, so I hope you bear with me, as this is going to be a little bit of a longer video. Baby 5 is at $31 right now. We are seeing it dip down a little bit from where it was. Did hit about $45, but it is seeing play in the Bonnie deck now. It's been seeing play in Perona, in the Fortress Yamato build. Now it's also seeing play in our early Bonnie list. I do need to preface by saying these are very early lists. There haven't been any, regional level events that have occurred for the OP07 format yet, as the set did just release Friday. But some of your local or flagship lists are starting to pop up now, and Baby 5 is one of the cards that's a very common inclusion for those Bonnie decks. But that is it for OP05. So we're going to jump now into our promo cards. Starting things off with our Dawn cards. The Straw Hat Dawn are still rather expensive, and I could actually see these Straw Hat Dawns going up maybe even just a little bit more, because if you look at the pricing for our upcoming regionals, which we just had signups for some of those today, regionals do not have the Straw Hat Dawn as a participation anymore. Some of the treasure cups do, but as far as I'm aware, the treasure cups are only giving the volume 1 packs out. So we have yet to see how else, or if there's going to be another way the volume 2 packs are going to be distributed. But if not, we could see your Chopper, Nami, Zoro, Frankie, and Jinbei Dawn start to go up. As you can see, actually, your Frankie and Jinbei Dawn have gone up quite substantially, as these were on the cheaper end for your Dawn cards. And I think now that we have seen that regional pricing, and with these two, or the Dawn packs being absent from the participation, people are wanting to pick these cards up sooner rather than later, because we don't know how these volume 2 Dawn packs are going to be distributed again, if at all. So these Dawn cards could end up getting even more expensive than they already are, which does suck for the people who are trying to collect those. But if you've been playing the game since early on, hopefully you've already managed to either acquire these by participating in events or just pick them up already. So your volume 1 ones, your Robin, Luffy, Sanji, Usopp, and Brook are probably a little bit safer, as we are still getting those for participation in treasure cups. But your other ones, you might want to keep your eye on those. Championship Dawn, this is the foiled version from Nats, is starting to come down a little bit, about $41 right now. And then your Yamato Dawn also coming down a little bit. Gold Dawn is also one we could see starting to go up in price, because this is no longer being given as participation for regionals as well. We are now going to be getting the Gear 5 Dawn, which looks incredible. Definitely going to be wanting to pick up 10 of those so that I can have a complete set for Dawn. But we could see the gold ones go up, though. The Gold Dawn, they're fine. I have my set and they're cool, but I definitely think the Gear 5 Dawn are going to be a lot more exciting to have in your collection over the Gold Dawn. Like, the Gold Dawn's cool, but the Gear 5 Dawn's a lot cooler. So that's it for our Dawn cards. Here we've got Gordon. Gordon card we haven't talked about in a little bit, but Red Purple Law start seeing a lot more play and success. EBO1, I think, maybe a little bit in OP06, but really EBO1 Law gets some great new tools. And while initially people were thinking, okay, Gordon's going to drop down in price because in OP06, we essentially get a reprint of Gordon. The only difference is its name isn't Gordon, and I think it's Revolutionary Army type, but I do think it is also film type as well. Same stat line, same effect. It's essentially the same card. It's just not named Gordon. However, a lot of those red purple law decks are playing 4 copies of Gordon and that new card from OP06 is essentially a reprint. So essentially they're playing 8 copies of Gordon. And because of that, this card is still rather expensive because the only decks that are really running the reprint of Gordon are also running Gordon, because the only decks that are really doing that are red purple law. So while initially I think people thought this one would come back down in price, and we did see early February was only about 14 bucks. Now that red purple law has started producing some results, we're back up to 25 again. So if you didn't have your Gordons, you might be out of luck if you're looking to play red purple law, because I don't think they'll be coming down much from here unless we get some sort of weird announcement that changes things, or the restrictions end up somehow impacting red purple law's viability. I don't think this card's going down unless one of those things happens. It's kind of the same thing with our film pack law as well. I believe last time I mentioned this card, I did bring up the fact that over in the East, they did get kind of a reprint of this. I think in like their, kind of like how we have the store tournament participation packs, they have those as well. And in one of theirs, they got kind of a reprint with a different art for this card. So hopefully we get that, and that will bring the price down on this one a bit. But if not, this card is probably also going to be staying kind of around this $15 price point, because there are no other ways to get this card. These cards were pretty difficult to acquire, and it's just a great fit for that red purple law deck, being a 4 cost that also reduces power. Heart Pirates typing's good, but I think more importantly is its film typing, because they're kind of more going film centric in EB01, and I do think that that is important. So hopefully we get that store tournament reprint at some point before it's too late and while it's still relevant, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. If you're looking to play red purple law though, deck's getting a little bit expensive. For your Uta battle cards, the winner card is now under $100, which is nice to see. But your other cards are still pretty expensive, most of them being around the $20 price point. Though February, the month of February, is coming to a close, and allegedly we are going to be getting those participation packs sent out to stores in March, so that I don't know how all LGS are choosing to deal with it. For the LGS in my area, if you participated in the event, you know, they've got the roster saved, so you should just be able to show up to the store sometime after they get these packs and pick it up as your participation for that event, because Bandai messed things up to no one's surprise, and you only got one of each of these cards, whereas all players were supposed to get one of each for participating. So these cards should be coming back down in price soon. I wouldn't buy these now. There's just no need. For your championship cards, these are the event pack variants, both from, you know, regional events as well as nationals. Stamped ones being just a little bit more in general, but, you know, for the most part, these championship cards are relatively cheap in comparison to where they were at not so long ago, which is nice to see. For your winner cards, a lot of these came down in price after we got the championship variants, which we'll take a look at in just a minute. Nami and Yamato still being on the more expensive end of things, along with Bonnie, but these championship variants are really kind of taking precedence. And with the new Jewelry Bonnie leader running that Supernova package, we are starting to see the Bonnie go up a little bit. Nami's coming down a little bit over time, which is nice. Card doesn't see a lot of play, but We've got our Nami tax, of course. Your Mihawk being, on the more expensive end as well. For the most part, these celebration pack cards are pretty fairly priced, I'd say. But your Mihawk, your Izo, I would say the Mihawk and the Nami and the Bonnie are kind of like your big ones. The Toshigi and Izo, while up there, they are going to get another variant through the premium Bandai binder that you were able to pre-order. It was pretty tricky to pre-order it because it sold out pretty quick, but there are going to be those variants out there as well, which I do think is something you need to keep in mind. Judge pack stuff, most things are coming down. Helmeppo's up a little bit as Helmeppo does see some play. OP06, and then Queen, still Queen. It's a great card for purple. Purple's just not super relevant right now. So it is starting to come back down in price. But other than that, most of these Judge cards are pretty inexpensive. Your sealed battle cards, for the most part, are coming down with the exception of Usopp, who has actually gone up quite a bit in price. And I'm not sure if this is just due to hype for maybe like the blue-green Zoro Sanji leader, which is going to be coming out right around the release of OP06. Or if there's some other deck that has been seeing success with this card. I don't know. Let me know down in the comment section below if you know why this one's gone up as much as it has. A lot of copies were sold yesterday at $30, so not too sure what was going on there. The only thing I can think of is that it's a 2-cost that you can play in your blue-green Sanji deck, or Zoro Sanji deck, which does like to reorder the top 5 cards of their deck, as they do a lot of stuff which is interacting with the top of their deck. So I could see that being the case. Kind of wish I'd picked up some copies before now, because I wanted to mess around with Zoro Sanji with this card, but I'm not going to be doing that if the card is $50. So last thing is, I did have someone comment on one of the last videos that they wanted me to take a look at some of these more top-end championship cards and talk about them a little more. Real quick, we'll talk about our store championship stuff. Nothing really noteworthy aside from Tony Chopper being more expensive as film's still seeing success, and Gecko Moria kind of shot up with all of the Warlord support coming about, still being one of the, I would say, best cards for that mono blue Doflamingo leader. But getting into our more expensive cards, Championship Jozu right now is about $250, and I think that's a pretty solid price for it, all things considered. While Whitebeard Pirate stuff isn't seeing a lot of play, and I think Jozu is a less sought out after character, if that Marco leader ends up being really good and playing the Whitebeard package, we could see this one go up, because it is on the lower end from championship cards, and with cards like Borsellino and Kizaru, we know there are players out there who really like to bling out their decks. Good friend of mine I know does have his playset of this Jozu, as he's a big Whitebeard Pirates fan. So depending on what support we see, this is one I could see going up in price over time. Would not be surprised if that was the case, especially if we get some good support for it. And people, much like with the Admirals, want to bling out their decks to, championship level and end up picking up some copies of this card while they're on the lower end. Borsellino, Kizaru still, or Borsellino and Kuzan still very expensive. Borsellino I think is going to start coming down though, now that the card's starting to see less and less play. Kuzan I imagine will probably stay about where it's at right now. Same thing with Marco. Like, if this card becomes relevant, maybe it'll go up like the Jozu 2 if people really want to go that route. Definitely do think this is one of the better looking championship cards. Really nice art on this one, but don't see this one changing too much. Sakazuki is just way overvalued. We haven't had one of these sell in months, and the last one that did was around $1,000. And for Edward Newgate, also this is an absurd pricing. We've seen some sell around $2,000, but I mean, I guess there are people who play mangas in their deck, but even if the Whitebeard Pirate stuff we get in future sets is good, I don't see people like blinging their stuff out with this. I think these are purely collector cards for the most part. And if you're looking to pick up a Newgate, I mean, I would say try and find something a little under 2,000. Really, I'd say, you know, somewhere around 1,200 would be kind of where I think this card should be at. But you know, I'm not an expert. Definitely for Sakazuki, if you're looking to pick up one of these, I would say try and aim a little under 1,000. The fact that they're not selling at this price, and the last one that sold was a little, you know, right around 1,000. I think if you find someone who's got one of these and really looking to get rid of it, you could probably snag it for around $900, maybe 1,000. But they're very tough sells, and you know, given where the card's selling at, that's kind of where I would what I would shoot for personally. Store Championship Luffy, also very, very expensive. That's a moderately played one too. For a near mint, we're up over $600 now, which is pretty crazy. I was actually not able to win one of these myself, so I did buy one pretty shortly after, and I thought I paid a lot when I bought mine for like 200, I want to say it was. But definitely glad I did. I love the art on this card. It's one of my favorite cards in my collection. So definitely glad I picked it up when I did. And lastly, we've got our Treasure Cup cards. These ones are weird, especially like the Queen right now. I think Queen, you know, we had one sell at 1,200. Realistically, I'd say now that this card is less relevant, maybe around 1,000 for this one. Though they are incredibly difficult to get. I definitely just gonna hold on to mine. The Marco, this is again kind of like we said with the other Whitebeard Pirate stuff. I think these are the ones that have the highest chance of seeing some serious fluctuations in the coming months. But of course, your cards like Zoro are also very expensive. This one, I don't even know what to say about this one. We only got two sales here. One's about 3,000, one is 6,000. I always thought this card was going for about 3,000, so I'm not sure if this was a legit sale or not. Could just be someone buying their own listing to make it look like it's worth more than it is. That is the thing that happens, but I'm not too sure. So it's really hard to formulate opinions about these championship cards just because of how limited the supply for them is. But if you're a hardcore collector and you're looking to pick these up, generally I would take a look at what the card is selling at, and then if you can find a seller either in one of the Discord groups or on Facebook Marketplace, you know, you could probably talk with the seller and maybe get it a little under where they're selling at now, as they won't have to deal with any fees by selling to it you know, that way, not through a third party like TCG Player, eBay, something like that. You do it through Facebook or Discord or something like that. You do have to be very careful with how you do it because you can get scammed, but I definitely think that's kind of the way to go with these more high-end cards, as it works out better for you as the buyer and the seller when it works out, you know, nicely, without the seller trying to scam you, of course. But I don't have anything else to say about that. These are very hard cards to talk about just because of how hard they are to get. But I think for the majority of players and collectors, these are not cards that are going to be relevant. But I did get a comment, and it is always fun to talk about new things. So I appreciate you commenting down below, and hope I was able to, you know, provide some satisfactory information about these cards. You know, if you do manage to watch this video, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Real quick, let's talk about our pre-release cards. You know me, there's not usually a lot to talk about here, though some of this film stuff has gone up quite a bit, just because the film Uta deck has seen quite a bit of success. And for 03, Pilaf and Virgo are quite a bit expensive. Other than that, nothing serious. Other than this, Tempest, Kick, Sky Slicer has gone up in price quite a bit. I kind of want to pick up my last copy of Erdor. I actually only have 3, and just kind of for nostalgia, as it was an Erdor build of Rob Lucci that got me my invite, or round 2 buy rather, for Nationals last year. So definitely love this card, one of my favorite ones to play. For OP03 or OP04, actually I'm gonna go back to OP03 real quick, as there was a card I wanted to bring up. The Kumadori is actually going up, and then it's the Ennis Lobby. I just finished out my playset of this one, and depending on how good the new Rob Lucci leader in OP07 is, I think this one is one that has a lot of potential to go up in price. I think the biggest downside of this card is that it's not searchable, but I think alongside the new Lucci leader being able to reduce cost of 1 by attacking, alongside this 2 cost, if you're able to get this out early, you're able to reduce up to 3 cost between 2 characters every turn, which is pretty great, especially with cards like the 4 cost Lucci, Kaku. Just a lot of great removal cards that I think go really well with this. We also get a CP type 1 cost removal card for a 1 cost, so it's like a 1-for-1, and you don't have to discard any cards. With this in your leader effect, you're able to hit a 4, and like I keep saying, 4 is like one of the magic numbers right now in terms of, you know, being able to hit. You want to be able to hit 4 costs with your removal cards or resting effects or whatever it be, as they are some of the most relevant cards in the current format. So I don't know, I think there might be a place for Ennis Lobby in a CP deck in the future, which is why I decided to pick up mine while they were still, I think these were some of my sales here, while they were still about $2. For OP04 stuff, not a lot to talk about. Baby 5 seeing some play is just a 2k counter, so there are going to be some people trying to max rarity. There are green decks who are going to be wanting the Baby 5s, but other than that, nothing really worth talking about here. Is that Usopp is getting weirdly expensive for some reason. But yeah, that's about it for OP04. And then your anniversary cards that still don't have pictures for some reason are pretty expensive on your Onami or Nico Robin. I should still try and find my copy. I know I have one, I just seem to have misplaced it, and I'm not sure where it went. But that's it for pre-release stuff. Let's quickly talk about starter deck cards. Talk about Love being more on the expensive end. Starter deck cards now, which still holds to be proving to be the case. Not too sure why this one's gone up, so if you do know why, be sure to let me know down in the comments. If I had to take a guess, it's just because we are getting a Boa leader. It's a Boa card. Other than that, not too sure why this one would be going up in price. I guess we are getting, well, there is a Warlord Searcher 2 now, so this is a Warlord type card that could be searchable off of that in OP07. Your starter deck 4 stuff coming down. Definitely don't buy the sealed starters right now, much cheaper to buy singles. But it is worth noting that Blast Breath is going up in price, and I'm not too sure why. I believe someone pointed this out in my Discord. If you're not in the Discord, be sure to check it out, link down in the video description. But Blast Breath's gone up quite a bit, and I'm not too sure why. As far as I know, purple decks haven't been seeing success, really. I know there have been some purple yellow Croc decks that have won a couple flagships in EBO1, but they weren't running Blast Breath if I recall, so I'm not sure if there's been some other purple decks running around, though it could just be that we're supposed to be getting more Animal Kingdom stuff in OP08, so that is also a potential reason why this is going up as well. Your black starter deck cards, they're coming down a little bit, but your Great Eruptions and Hinas are still expensive. Could be some players just also being kind of cautious of potential bans and restrictions. I think if Hina gets hit, or if Rebecca gets hit, Hina also gets hit in a way. So Just something to keep in mind with that, because if Rebecca gets either banned or restricted, Hina's not really worth playing anymore either, because you really play Hina as a great option to get back off of your Rebecca. And if you've not got Rebecca's, it makes Hina a lot harder to get value out of. And then for your starter deck 7, more or less things are coming down. Brulee's going up a little bit though. Big Mom's coming down a little bit. If you don't have your Big Moms and Brulees though, please, if you plan on playing yellow, pick up your playsets now. I can almost promise you that they're going to get more expensive, because a lot of yellow decks, especially the Big Mom, like, I think you want to have your playset of Brulees, but all the yellow decks are playing 4 copies of this Big Mom, be it NL or Katakuri. At least over in the East, the decks that were doing well and seeing success were playing 4 copies of the 7-cost Charlotte Linlin. And lastly, before we end the video, don't buy the pre-sales. OP06 comes out in just a couple weeks. So the pre-sales, some of them are up on TCG Player. Please don't buy these. I'm seeing people buy the Yamato leader, you know, not the ult, just the regular Yamato leader for $5. We all know that leader cards are never anything more than $1. Like, I think they're all like under 50 cents. People are buying SR Hody Jones for $30. Someone, don't be that guy. Just wait. Look at OP05 SRs and how they were on a release. You know, it was hard to get product, but I don't know. I think the most expensive SR in the beginning was Rebecca, who was around $10, $12. So just be patient. Don't buy the pre-sales. Things will come down. There is no reason to pay absurd prices for your rares. Pre-sales is just kind of a scummy way that some stores make a little bit of extra money, but just don't buy them. Don't support that. Just wait for the official release to pick up your cards. Everything will be all well and good. But with that, that is going to wrap things up for today's video. I know this one ran a little bit longer than normal, so I do apologize for that, but hope you bared with me and enjoyed, you know, conversation, discussion. Be sure to share your thoughts down in the video description below. I'm planning to start doing some more content here in the near future. I'm really hoping to get a video out in the next week or so, kind of wrapping things up for the OP05 format and EB01 format over in the East. Just talking about what's doing well, what did well, and what can we expect to do well in the future. That sort of thing. I think it'll be a really fun discussion to have, especially alongside the market watches we do here on the channel, as I do frequently reference, you know, deck lists that are doing well in the East, deck lists that are doing well here in the West. So I think it's worth talking about, you know, the lists that are doing well and specific cards that are doing well in those decks. So I hope you look forward to that, but I'm going to stop rambling here. As always, if you enjoyed the content, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. But with that, I will let you all go. Thank you again for watching, and I will catch you all in the next video. Peace.